Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the How to Create an RPG game in Godot 4. And today we're going to be creating a full combat system. So if you're following along with this tutorial series, or even if you're not and just need a well-working combat system, this video is perfect for you. But before we get started, I just want to ask if you go down below and hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video so YouTube pushes this series to more inspiring game developers so they can learn to make their own Godot games as well. But let's get started with episode 5 and create a combat system. Okay, so to start with our combat system, we're going to need, our enemy to be able to attack our player and our player to be able to attack our enemy. And currently in this game, we don't have that at all. We have a enemy that chases our player, for a certain range, and when we exit this range it stops, but we can stand right next to it and it will never give us damage. The player never dies and the enemy never dies, right? But if you need to learn to make this exact enemy, I'll leave a link to that in the pinned comment because we created that in episode 4 of this series. So it's a pretty good episode if you need to know how to make an enemy. But the enemy only chases the player, it doesn't really do anything. So that's where combat system comes into play. We need to be able to attack our enemy, and our enemy needs to be able to attack our player. So to do that, obviously, first off, we're going to need some sort of hitbox, right? So we'll make an area 2D, and we'll just name this our player's hitbox. This is going to be on our player, and we can create a collision shape 2D, and we'll just make this, a little bit bigger than the player like this, because this is basically going to say when the enemy is in this zone, then the enemy is allowed to attack our player. And we're also going to need one of these on the enemy, right? So we'll add a area 2D, and we'll name this one the enemy hitbox, right? And same thing, add a collision shape, and then we will make this a little bit bigger than our enemy, probably about like this, right? So whenever this collision shape is overlapping with this collision shape, then it's going to say, okay, now we're allowed to attack, right? Because we only want to be able to attack if we are close enough to the player. So let's go back to the player, and we're going to have to go into the script. But before we go into the script, I want to go to our area 2D and we can signal some nodes, right? So we need to signal body entered, and we'll signal this to the player.gd, and then we also need to signal body exited, and we'll signal this to the player script as well. And we'll move these up a little bit. We also are going to need a bit of variables, right? So we'll add some variables. We're gonna need a variable for our enemy, like if our enemy is in the range to attack, so we'll just name it like enemy in attack range or something like that, right? So if enemy is in attack range, and obviously when we start the game it's going to be equal to false, and then var enemy, like we need like an attack cooldown, right? Because we don't want to just spam attack, right? We want to have a couple milliseconds of cooldown or something, or maybe a couple seconds of cooldown, right? So then we have our health, which is going to be equal to 100 to keep it simple, and we'll also have a variable to know if our player is alive or not. So our player is alive when we start the game, so we'll equal that to true, right? Now down here, when something enters the player's hitbox, we want to check to make sure it's the enemy. So to do that, we'll go if body, which is whatever body enters the area. We'll do if body has method, and then we'll check if it is the enemy, and then if it is, then we'll say enemy in attack range is going to be equal to true, because now the enemy is in that area, right? And then we can go down here and basically same thing, but if the body that exits the area, if the body that exits has the method enemy, then we're no longer in the attack range, so we don't want to be able to attack anymore. And we also want to create a function for enemy attack. So this is how we will deal with the attack, and for now we'll just pass. And one more thing, because right now our enemy does not have a method enemy, right? Our enemy does not. So if we go to our enemy script, we can just go down here, we can create a function, name it enemy, make sure you name it the exact same thing, and we can just pass, right? So now this is a method, right? So now whatever object in our game that has this method works in this script, right? So it basically checks if it has that function. And if it has that function, then it is going to allow us to, you know, go through this if statement. So we also want to make one for the player, because in a minute we're going to need to access this. We're going to have to say if body.has method is the player whenever we go the opposite way and the enemy is attacking our player, right? So we can, on our enemy attack right here, we can actually add a print statement real quick. And if we add a print statement, we can say something like, you know, player took damage or something, right? Because this will allow the player to take damage. And if we go to our world and we get close, you can see we actually do not call that function anywhere, do we? No. Okay, so we do not call this function anywhere. We have to go and we have to call this enemy attack function, and we can just call it, let's say we can call it up here in our physics process. Yeah, so we'll add this to our physics process and we'll just name it enemy attack, right? We'll call that function. And we also need to go down here and we need to go if enemy in attack range, right? So if that is equal to true, then we will print this, right? So basically, now if we play, you see, then when we get in zone, it says, okay, players taking damage, players taking damage, players taking damage. Let's just say player minus like 10 health, right? So if we play this, you see, and we get in the zone, it goes down, and we're basically right now we're taking thousands of health, which is not good. And to fix that, we are going to need a cooldown, right? Because we want to wait a little bit before our enemy attacks again. So to fix that, we'll go to our player and we will add a timer node, right? So we'll add a timer node, and we can name this timer node, you know, just something very basic like attack cooldown. So this would be our attack cooldown, and we can go to our this function here, right, in our enemy attack, and we're actually going to change this up a little bit. So we made a variable up here which is our attack cooldown, and we're about to use that. So we'll basically say if enemy in attack range and enemy attack cooldown equals true, right? So if both of those are true, then we want our health, we want the health of our player to equal health minus 20, right? So we'll just minus 20 for every single health, or for every damage or every hit we take, right? So boom, and then we need to say after, that's right after we attack. So as soon as our enemy attacks our player, then we need to set our enemy attack cooldown to equal to false, so we can't attack instantly after. And then are going to call our timer node, which is called attack cooldown. So that's the timer node, and we'll just do start, right? And then we need to set a, we can leave that. No, actually, let's just print, we'll just print our health statement, right? So now let's see what we need. So we need our timeout. So if we go to our timer and we go up to node and we signal a timeout, we signal this to our player script, and then now we have a timeout function. And in this timeout function, we can keep it simple and say enemy attack cooldown equals to true. So basically, as soon as we start the timer, it's going to start the timer. As soon as the timer goes off, then it's going to set the attack cooldown to true again. So then we can run this again so our enemy can attack again, right? And then we can also go into our, we need to go, okay, so no, this looks good, right? But we also need to go into our physics process up here, way up here, and we'll basically just do something like if health is greater than or equal to 0, or is less than or equal to 0, then player alive equals false. And then like, so right here, if you want to add an end screen, this is where you would like add in screen or whatever, right? So this is where you would add your end screen. This is where you would add like your respawn screen, or go back to menu, or you know, whatever you need to do, or go back to like respawn or whatever it is, right? So this is where you would do that. This is where you would call that, because this is where the player ends up dying right there. And then we'll just do health equals 0, just to make sure our health is 0 and not like negative health, right? And then we can print player has been killed, and then we can just, like, you know, simple statement, self queue free, which is obviously not something you want to do for a player. That would never be good. You would either want to, you know, go to an end screen or something like that. You would never want to self queue, because it kind of basically just deletes the player. So now our enemy can attack our player, right? If we go to our timer though, we can change up our seconds. So how long do you want the cooldown to be? Do you want the player, or do you want the enemy to be able to attack every half second? Which that's what we'll set it, and we can always change this. So we'll do like 0.5. And then if we go to our world, you can see that it prints 80, 60, 40, 20, and player has been killed, right? So that all works very, very well. And, you know, if we take damage, stuff like that, and it looks good, right? So I just want to mention one thing before. If you're asking about respawning, I'm going to be uploading a video very, very soon about respawning. It's going to come out in a video. It should be like episode 8. It's going to be about a health bar, and respawning is going to be in that video. So if you are asking about that, then make sure that you go and check out that video. It will for sure be linked in the playlist, which is for this series, the action RPG series for Godot 4. It's going to be in there. It's going to be episode 8. So if you want to check that out, that is how you would create respawning for your player, right? But now we're going to need like a global script, right? So if we go here and we file new script, and we can just create our global script .gd, and in here we can kind of first of all delete all this, and we can just make a simple variable for now. Right now we'll only have one variable, but throughout the series we're going to be going and adding more and more variables in here. So basically, player current attack equals false. So basically, is the player currently attacking? That's what we're checking, right? So we need to go to project settings, auto load, and then we can get our global script, and we can add our global script. First of all, let's throw these scripts into their correct folders, right? This is a scene. So hopefully everything still works fine. It should, right? Yeah, okay, so everything works fine. Now we're saved into the right areas, right? So if we go to project settings, auto load, and we load in our scripts, global.gd, and then we can just name this, we can add this, name it global, right? And we'll delete this other one. So global, right? Now we can access this from other scripts. We can access this from every script that we have. So let's also go to our enemy. And now in our enemy, we already have our collision shape, right? So we will make some instances from our hitbox here. And we'll do the same instances, body entered, and also our body exited. And we'll send these to the enemy.gd, so the enemy's main script. And then we also want to create a couple variables real quick in our enemy, like some basic stuff like health equals to 100, and then var, like check if our player is in our attack zone. Obviously, when we start the game, that is going to be equal to false. And then now down here, we can basically go on enemy hitbox body entered. We can check if body, which is basically the same exact thing that we did on the player script, if body.has method, and we'll check if this is the player, because remember we added the function, the player function, and we just put a pass. That is why we're going to check to make sure that's the player, and then we'll do zone equals to true, and kind of the same exact thing for when the body exits the player, but we'll just set the player in zone to false because it will no longer be in the zone. And then we'll create a new function which is going to be deal with damage. This is going to deal with any damage that our enemy takes. So we'll do if player in attack zone and global.player current attack is equal to true, right? So this is our global variable that we just created in the global script. Then we'll do health equals health minus 20 because our player will be able to deal 20 damage to our player. and then we'll just print like something like slime health equals, and then our health, right? And that we can also say like if health is less than or equal to 0, because if it is less than or equal to 0, then we can just self queue free, because then basically at that point the slime would be, you know, considered dead, right? So boom, and then we need to call this function in our physics process up here. So we'll just, this is our, no, okay, yeah, this is our enemy. Okay, so we'll do player, or I'm reading these variables up here, so I'm lost. So we'll call deal with damage function, right? So we'll deal that, so because we always want to be dealing with damage no matter what. We always want to be making sure that the player is not attacking our enemy or something like that, right? So boom. So now if we play, let's see what happens. We obviously, nothing's really going to happen because we have no way to attack our player, but logically through this code our enemy should be able to deal with damage, right? So now we have like the code for our enemy, but we need to make like some stuff in our player to tell our enemy that it's being attacked. So first of all, I want to go to project, I want to go to project settings, I want to go to our input map and create a brand new input, which is going to be called attack, and we'll just make this the button E, right? So E is going to be for attack. And then now if we go back to our player, in our player script, I'm going to make one more variable up here, and we'll just name this var attack IP, which is going to be like in progress. That will stand for in progress. So if attack is in progress, obviously when we start the game, it's going to be equal to false. But so if we go right here, right? So this is all of our animations. So this is going to be for our animations because we need to play an attack animation. So for example, right here in our, you know, else if down, we have our current direction down, play animation, velocity, and it, you know, kind of just deals with our movement. But we need to kind of change this up a little bit, right? Because we need to have our if movement is equal to 1, and this is actually going to be done down here because so this is our play animation, right? So during our play animation, if direction is equal to right, and then it's going to check if, you know, it's going to flip if it has to, and then if movement is equal to 1, play animation side. But remember, now we have a new animation. So now we have a new animation, and we have to be able to play a, you know, a kind of like a an attack animation, right? So we'll come down here and basically else if movement is equal to 0. So basically this means if we have no movement, then we want to say if attack in progress, if attack in progress is equal to false. So we also want to check if attack in progress is equal to false, and then we'll play our idle animation. So we only want to play our idle animation if we have no attack in progress, right? Because if we do have an attack in progress, we do not want to play our idle animation. We want to be playing our attack animation. So we'll just do that to all of these zones, right? And if you want to learn to make this exact player that we created here, then again, there is a tutorial for that on this channel. It will be linked in the playlist that will be in the pinned comment and in the description. So make sure you watch all these episodes if you want to, you know exactly what's going on all throughout the way. But for our animation, obviously, we have still a little bit of an issue, right? Because we still never ever call our attack animation, right? So we are going to go down here to the bottom, and we are going to create a new function, and we'll name this our attack function, right? So this will be our attack function, and we'll just it's gonna kind of be a little bit on the lines of this animation up here, right? So we'll do var direction is equal to our current direction, kind of what we did above. And then we'll basically do if our input, so if input.is action just pressed, and this is going to be our attack key that we just created. So if our attack key is just pressed, then we want to say global.player.current attack is equal to true, which is our global function. So now our enemy knows that we clicked the attack button, right? And now everything below this is going to kind of be just for animation, right? So that's all you need. So if we were to play right now, our enemy would take damage. But let's just go through and add the animations, because it's going to be a little bit of code, right? So let's say basically if direction is equal to right, which we declare up top. Obviously, if you just say this in your game, this is not going to work, because this is a variable that we created, and this is also the variable that's stored in the current direction up here, right? So again, if none of this is making sense, go and watch the previous tutorials. They will really help you out. So if direction is equal to right, then we want to call our animated sprite to D, and we'll just say like flip H. So flip horizontal is equal to false, because that means we want the player to be the way the art was created. If that makes sense. I'll explain it here in just a second. But then we want to play our side attack animation, right? And then we'll get our deal damage, our deal attack timer, which is going to be kind of like which we haven't really created yet, right? We need to create that. We need to create some type of timer that allows us to not just like spam the attack button, if that makes sense, right? Because we do not want to just be able to spam the attack button. So what we'll do our player will add a brand new timer, and we will name this one our deal attack timer. And then if we go back to our script, we can finish up our script, and now we can do deal attack timer dot start, right? And then that's all we need. So now we knew if direction is equal to left, and then it would kind of be the exact same thing. But obviously for left, actually left is going to be basically the same, except the flip H, right? Because then wait. So no, yeah, flip H would need to be equal to true, because now we need to flip the art the other way, so we're facing the left, right? And then basically if direction is equal to down, we want to animated sprite to D dot play, and then we'll play our front attack, and then we'll also call the deal damage timer dot start, right? And then we can kind of copy all of this here, and instead of it being down, we are going to make this up. And front attack, we will change this to our back attack animation, right? So boom, that all looks good, right? So now we need to add the timeout for our deal attack timer. So we'll do timeout, and we'll send that to the player. And in this function, we're gonna say deal attack timer dot stop, which you don't really need, but that's just so we don't keep making a cycle and keep replaying it over and over and over. So actually you do need that. But global.player dot current attack, which is our global. Did I spell global? I did spell global wrong. That's why it wasn't coming up. So this is getting into our global script again. Global attack equals false. So now we want to change it to false. So now our enemy knows that we're no longer attacking, right? And this should all look good. So our attack here, we kind of got to play around with the time, right? So we're gonna have to play around. We'll say like wait time of we'll start with 0.5, and we can change this as we go. But this is more for how long it takes our animation to play. So for example, in our animated sprite and in our attack, side attack, where's side attack? Or front attack, I guess it's 4 animations, right? So we have 4 animations in our attack frame, and obviously that means 8 frames a second. So it will take half a second to play all 4, right? We want to play all 4, then we want to stop. We don't want to keep cycling through. So you want to put the time in your timer here, the exact amount of time it takes for you to finish all the frames in your attack animation, right? So it looks good. So after that happens, we can play and we can see what happens. So do we have an attack animation? we don't have an attack animation. Our player cannot attack. So did we, I don't think we, yeah, we, okay, so that's completely on me. We never even call the attack animation, right? So we need to go up to our physics process and we need to call the attack animation. Now, let's see. So now that looks good, right? So that would call here and then we, yeah, okay. So now if we were to play, do we now have an attack animation? As you can see, yeah, so now we do have an attack animation. This way, we play, and it works in, so if we're facing this direction, we play it this way. If we're facing this direction, we play it that way. If we're facing this direction, we play it this way. And if we're facing the bottom, we play it that way. So now every single way works, right? So that looks good. So that is nice. So now we kind of like, if you see, if we play, the enemy instantly dies. It takes like 100 damage instantly, which is not good, right? Because we want to be able to hit it. It takes 20 damage, then we hit it again. It takes 20 more damage, then we hit it again, and it takes 20 more damage. So basically now we need to add like a take damage cooldown on our enemy. So if we go to our enemy and we can add another timer, or we can, we don't even have a timer on our enemy, but we can add a timer to our enemy and we can just name this our take damage cooldown, right? Take damage cooldown timer. So that's kind of what that is. And we'll set it to like 0.5 seconds as well. And then in our enemy.gd, so yeah, we're in our enemy.gd. In our enemy.gd, we want to create one more variable. And we'll name this var can take damage equals to true. Because when we start the game, we want to be able to take damage. And then we'll say on this timeout, so when our take damage cooldown timer times out, then we want to say can take damage is equal to true. And then we need to go to our deal with damage here, and we'll basically say, so right inside this if statement, we want to say if can take damage is equal to true. Then we want to go into here. We'll just tab all that a little bit forward, right? And then we want to, as soon as we minus our health, so as soon as we take away health, we want to take damage cooldown dot start. We want to call our timer so it starts, and then we want to say can take damage is equal to false. So now if we are to play the game, as you can see, our player can take damage, as you can see, and then our player can also deal damage, right? Our player was killed, but our slime health then goes down to 80. And if we play again and we hit it, as you can see, yeah, so now our slime health is at 40. So one more hit, but our slime hit our player first, right? Which is not good. But if we like kind of spam this as quick as we can, our player still gets killed, which is not good because our slime gets the first hit. But obviously in a future episode, we're going to be adding cooldown, but let's go back to our player real quick and let's just add like an extra, some extra health, right? Let's give our no, whoa, that was on our enemy, right? But let's go to our player and let's give him some extra health just for, demonstration. But now if we play, as you can see, we kill the enemy. It takes 5 hits or whatever to kill the enemy. Our player is now at 60 health, and that's how that works, right? So that is how you create a pretty complex, pretty decent, it's not really too complex, but it's also not overly basic, and that's how you create a combat system in Godot. So I hope this video did help you create a combat system in your game, and if you need any help in Godot, and let me know, and I would love to help you out in the comments down below. But until next time, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video so more inspiring game developers can learn to make their own combat system as well. But be safe and have a wonderful rest of your day.